Today, we are diving deep into one of the most incredible stories in all of biology, how we as a species continue. It's really a tale of two completely different strategies. One's like a nonstop factory, and the other is this meticulously timed cycle. And the craziest part? It's all orchestrated by a tiny command center up in the brain. So let's break down the mechanics of human reproduction.
So that leads us to this massive question, right? We all start out as kids, but then something profound happens that totally transforms our bodies, unlocking the potential to create a whole new generation. How does this even happen? What flips that switch?
Well, that huge transformation starts with something we call puberty. You can think of it like a biological alarm clock that's been pre-programmed to go off at a certain time. It sends out a signal that tells the body, okay, it's time to start the transition from childhood to adulthood. This is the exact moment that the reproductive system, which has been dormant for years, finally starts to wake up.
And that brings us perfectly to our first section, puberty, which honestly you can just think of as the Great Awakening. This isn't just a period of awkward growth spurts, it's the systematic activation of the entire reproductive system. So what is puberty really? It's that critical period where the body goes through massive structural and, psychological changes. For females, this usually kicks in between the ages of 10 and 13. For males, it's a little bit later, typically between 13 and 15. But what's actually causing all this incredible change? To understand that, we have to look upstairs, to the brain's command center. See, it turns out this entire amazing process doesn't actually start in the reproductive organs themselves. Nope. It all starts with a series of commands sent from the brain.
Okay, so this diagram shows the chain of command, and it all begins right here, in the brain. There's this tiny region called the hypothalamus. Think of it as the general. It sends out the very first order. That order goes to the pituitary gland, which is like the messenger service, and it then sends signals out to the troops on the ground, the testes in males and the ovaries in females.
And that very first order from the hypothalamus? It's a hormone called GnRH. You should just think of this as the master key. It travels a super short distance to the pituitary gland with one simple, powerful instruction. It's time. Release the messengers. The pituitary gets that message and responds immediately by sending out two key messengers of its own. The first one, FSH, tells the gonads to start making sex cells, so sperm and eggs. The second one, LH, tells them to start pumping out sex hormones like testosterone and estrogen. These two hormones are basically the workhorses of the entire reproductive system.
All right, so the signal has been sent. Let's check out how the male reproductive system responds. The absolute best way to think about the male reproductive system is as a non-stop production line. Once it gets switched on at puberty, it is literally designed to run for decades.
The main production facilities here are the testes. Inside, there's this incredible network of tiny coiled tubes. You can really picture them as the factory floor. This is where those hormonal signals, FSH and LH, arrive to kickstart two absolutely crucial processes, making sperm and producing testosterone.
Now, the process of actually creating sperm is called spermatogenesis. It all starts with stem cells that are constantly making copies of themselves. This ensures the factory never, ever runs out of raw materials. Then, through this special type of cell division called meiosis, the number of chromosomes gets cut in half. The end result is that one single starting cell becomes 4 potential sperm.
This diagram shows you that whole assembly line perfectly. You've got a single cell at the top that divides and develops, moving toward the center of the tube. The most important thing to get here is that for every one cell that starts this journey, the system produces 4 potential sperm. It's just an incredibly efficient process. And here is the final product. Each individual sperm is a little marvel of biological engineering, and it's built for just one mission: to travel. The head contains the precious cargo, the DNA. The middle piece is the engine room, packed with power-generating mitochondria. And that tail? That's the propeller, driving it forward. Okay, now let's completely switch gears and look at the female system, because it has a totally different strategy. If the male system is a continuous factory, the female system is more like a carefully managed precious cycle. It's not about mass production. It's all about quality and perfect timing. The absolute core of the female system is the ovaries. And right away, here's the first major difference. Unlike the male system, which just starts manufacturing everything at puberty, a female is born with all the potential egg cells she will ever have stored safely away in her ovaries.
And this is a staggering fact. A female is born with millions of these potential egg cells, but by the time puberty even begins, only about 40,000 are left. It is a finite supply, and from this point on, they're going to be selected for maturation one by one each and every month. This is a huge contrast to the nonstop production we see in males. The process of creating an egg is also really unique. It actually begins before birth, when the potential egg cells enter their first stage of development, and then they just stop. They pause in a state of suspended animation for years. After puberty, hormonal cycles coax a few of them to resume their development each month. And notice that unequal division? One starting cell produces only one large viable egg.
Each of these developing eggs is nurtured inside a structure called a follicle, which is basically like its personal life support system. Every month, FSH stimulates a few of these follicles to grow, but usually a big surge of LH triggers only one to release its mature egg. That event is what we call ovulation. Okay, so we've seen the two different blueprints, the continuous production of the male system and the selective cyclical maturation of the female system. Let's just put them side by side to really see the difference and let it sink in.
This slide right here, this is the key takeaway for this whole thing. For males, sperm production starts at puberty, it's continuous, and it can last a lifetime. For females, egg development begins before they're even born, it runs in a monthly cycle, and it eventually ends at menopause. Two completely different strategies, all to achieve the same ultimate goal.
You know, when you see it at this scale, it's just awe-inspiring. Millions of tiny, perfectly engineered vessels, each one carrying a unique genetic code, all on this incredible journey. The complexity of what's happening inside our bodies, all the time, silently, it's just truly remarkable.
Which brings us to a final thought. We've just walked through this unbelievably complex system, perfected over millions of years. All of this precision, all of this energy is dedicated to one single goal, creating a new beginning. It just makes you wonder, doesn't it? What does that incredible precision tell us about the very nature of life itself?